goes up like this. Today we're going to go over a plot chart. Our example today is a story called Little Red Riding Hood. Yesterday you learned about the different parts of plot, including the exposition with the characters, setting, and conflict, the main events in the rising action, the climax, the main events in the falling action, and the resolution. I want to show you how to fill out a plot chart using the information from a short story. Many of you know the short story Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood is a story that many of us have heard when we're younger about a girl traveling to see her grandmother but gets stopped by a wolf who wants to eat her. This is a little bit of a different, more modern take on it, but it still follows the same plot. So this is Little Red by John Luggett. "Hi there, Red," said a wolf to a little girl in a red velvet hood. "How'd you like a ride on my motorcycle?" "Thank you, sir, but I can't," replied Little Red Riding Hood. "As you can see, I'm carrying the basket of ginger cookies to my grandmother, and I can't be late." "Tell you what, Red, you just hop on the back and I'll run you over to Granny's in 5 seconds flat." "My grandmother lives way out at the end of Lonely Road," Red protested. "It's miles and miles." "This here motorcycle eats miles." "No, thank you," said Little Red Riding Hood. "I've made up my mind." "Suit yourself," chuckled the wolf, who had thought of a wicked plan. He would go alone to the end of Lonely Road, gobble up Red's grandma, and then, when the little girl turned up, he would gobble her up too. So arriving at the last house on Lonely Road, the wolf raced his engine, scaring Grandma out her back door and under the woodshed. The wolf was puzzled to find the house empty, but he put on Grandma's nightcap and nightshirt and climbed into the bed to wait for Red. It was nearly dark when Red arrived, but as she approached her grandma's bed, she sensed something was wrong. "Are you all right, Granny?" Red asked. "Your eyes look bloodshot." "All the better to see you with," the wolf replied. "And your teeth. Suddenly they look like fangs." "All the better to eat," the wolf began, but he stopped at the sound of his motorcycle engine thundering in the front yard. Vroom! "Wait right there, Red," said the wolf, bounding from the bed. The wolf was startled to find Grandma sitting on the motorcycle. "Hey!" he shouted. "Stop fooling with my bike." As he lunged for her, Grandma found the gear shift, and the cycle leapt forward, scooping the wolf up on its handlebars and hurling him into a giant thorn bush, which is where the police found him when they arrived. The wolf was brought to trial and sent to prison. Granny became a popular guest on talk shows, and Red lived happily ever after. So that was the story of Little Red Riding Hood. And I want to show you how to complete a plot chart. So this looks like a lot of information, which it is. It's a summary of the story. It tells you all of the main events that happened in Little Red. First thing that we're going to do is take a look at the exposition. We're going to see that there are main characters. I just put down Little Red and the wolf. I didn't include Grandma because she was more of a minor character towards the end. I know that she had a big role in it, but for now I just put Little Red and the wolf because those are the two people I saw in the beginning. You can definitely still put Grandma down. I just chose not to. And then you have this setting. The setting was at Lonely Road and Grandma's house. You could also say different things if you remember, like if you're saying a path or part of the forest, but this is what I chose to put down. The conflict is that Little Red Riding Hood wants to take cookies to her grandmother, but the wolf wants to eat her. This is the main problem of the story. Sometimes you can think of it as somebody wants something, but. And in that case, you could say Little Red Riding Hood wants to take cookies to her grandmother, but the wolf wants to eat her. That's the problem that she's having. And then we go into the main events in the rising action. The main events I put in order, starting from the bottom and going up to the top. There doesn't have to be 5 main events, but there usually at least needs to be 5 main events. You'll see in a novel that there'll be much more than 5 main events, and even in some short stories, sometimes there's 8 or 10 or 15 main events. So the first main event in the rising action is that Little Red meets the wolf, and he asks her if she wants a ride to Grandma's. The second main event that I put down is that Red continues to walk to Grandma's house and the wolf gets to the house before her. The third main event is that she says no, and the wolf goes to Grandma's house without her, planning on gobbling both of them up. Notice that all of these main events are really important. I didn't include any of the little details. I've only included the main events. The fourth main event is that his motorcycle scares her, and Grandma runs to hide in the shed. He, not knowing where she is, dresses up like Grandma and waits for Little Red. The fifth main event is when Little Red arrives. She notices that her grandma looks strange and starts having doubts about her being her grandmother. It's okay to put your own words in here as long as they accurately reflect the events in the short story. The climactic moment is really that most exciting, emotional, suspenseful moment where you learn how the conflict is going to be solved. And this is the vroom vroom. This is when the wolf is about to eat Little Red, but he hears the engine of his motorcycle roar. And Granny is on the motorcycle attempting to save her granddaughter, Little Red. It's here we know that it probably won't work out for the wolf and he probably won't get to eat Little Red. But we're still not completely sure. But we just know that most exciting moment, vroom vroom, motorcycle roars, the wolf is distracted, Granny's coming in to save the day. The main events in the falling action are after that climactic moment. Grandma runs the wolf into the thorn bushes, and the police come to arrest the wolf. The resolution is the very end of the story. This is where all the loose ends are wrapped up, and often the resolution in a short story is 1 to maybe 2, 3 sentences. In a novel, sometimes this is the last chapter. If you have something like a novel or a longer short story with some subplots in it, the resolution and the falling action even might wrap up some of those issues as well. But here our resolution was Little Red lives happily ever after, Grandma goes on a talk show, and the wolf goes to prison. We really have no questions left with this story. We know exactly what happens. So again, you have all your parts of the plot chart. You have the exposition, which I did first. You have your main events in the rising action, which lead up to the climax. Notice the main events stop right when the wolf is about to eat Little Red. And then after the vroom, we have our main events in the falling action with our resolution tying up all loose ends at the very end of the story.